Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Her apartment at all around the end of December?
I don't remember.
Who do you think would have done something like this to Michelle?
To be honest, I wouldn't know. See, it's hard to say, she dates a lot. She knows a lot of men.
Yeah,
so I'll be honest, I wouldn't know.
I don't think you've been altogether truthful with me, and it's getting kind of late. I'm going to show you a series of photographs.
Okay.
And maybe you can explain some of these discrepancies.
Mm-hmm.
We've got you going in, we've got you coming out, and we've watched the video. There's no one else.
Uh-huh.
It's you, Gary.
Okay.
You're the one
me.
that holds the secret to her final hours.
It's me.
And maybe it can be explained. We don't know. We weren't there. Did something
like
go
I said,
wrong?
Michelle Thornton was 43 years old, working as a cashier at the Safeway and living alone in a known apartment building in Belltown, where she had resided for several decades. Her manager at Safeway knew her as a reliable employee, and her friends knew her as a free spirit who was friendly, outgoing, and fun to be around. Michelle would host an annual New Year's Eve party so her friends could view the fireworks from her window. This has happened every year since Michelle's mom passed away 15 years ago. Michelle would throw these parties to bring her friends close and enjoy their company. In 2010, things were a little different with Michelle's party. Michelle was good friends with a guy named Charles Cruz. Charles and a group of friends were supposed to go over to Michelle's house on New Year's Eve to have a few drinks and watch the fireworks. Standing outside Michelle's building, they tried to buzz up to her apartment and got no answer. They tried to call Michelle's cell phone since they had plans, but still no answer. All her friends thought it was strange, but also felt that she could be at the local bar waiting for them. So everyone went to the local bar hoping to see Michelle, but when arriving at the bar, she wasn't there either. Over the following 3 days, her friends kept reaching out to see if anyone had heard from Michelle, but no one had heard or seen her. Charles became concerned and went to Michelle's job at Safeway to see if she had been in for work. He learned that she had missed work, which was not like her at all. It turned out that she had been scheduled to work on December 30th at 2:15 p.m. and again on December 31st at 9:15 a.m., but she never showed up for either shift. According to managers at Safeway, this was unlike her. She was usually on time and she would call if she was running late. After that, Charles tried one last time to contact Michelle, and when she didn't answer, he called Seattle police and asked if officers could do a welfare check on his friend. The officers went with Cruz to Michelle Building at 11 Vine Street. This is a secure building requiring either a key or contact with a resident to buzz in a visitor. They buzzed apartment 308 from outside the main entrance but got no response. 308 was Michelle's apartment. When someone left the building, officers walked in and went to apartment 308. They knocked and still got no response. Officers still wanted to make sure Michelle was okay, so they located a building manager and asked if anyone can unlock the door to room 308 because they was there to do a welfare check and need to see if the tenant was okay. After the manager opened the door to Michelle's apartment, the two officers made a brief tour around the apartment while Charles waited by the door. Since this was a welfare check, they were not looking for evidence and were inside for no more than a minute. Officers checked the bedroom and bathroom. He saw a closet door, but he did not open it as that would have been outside the scope of a welfare check. On January 4th, a week after Michelle had last been seen, her dad filed a missing person report. Since she was an official missing person, detectives could go back to her apartment and do a better search and look for any evidence that would provide information on her whereabouts. When the detectives walked into Michelle's apartment, the radio was blasting, and as they walked closer to the living room showed signs of a struggle. The couch was askew, and there was a broken picture frame on the floor. There was a pink bathrobe with what appeared to be feces stains on the sofa and matching bathrobe ties nearby. Feces were also found on a towel in the bathroom and pajama bottoms in the bedroom. Detectives called out for Michelle, but with no response, the detectives walked into her bedroom, and when they got there, they walked over to her closet and opened the door. As soon as they opened the door to the closet, they saw Michelle's naked body from the waist down, and she also had dried blood on her face. She was face up, with her feet pressed against the wall and her head jammed against the door jamb. Careful not to touch or move the body, detectives saw several abrasions on Michelle's neck which made them feel like she had been strangled. Detectives started asking neighbors if they saw or heard anything leading up to New Year's Eve, but everyone they spoke to said no. Since it was an apartment complex, detectives knew that the building has security cameras, so they wanted to take a look and see if that would give them a clue. When looking over the camera footage leading up to the New Year's Eve party, officers spot Michelle on the 29th at around 8 p.m. She was in the front of her building getting ready to enter, and she was with a friend named Gary. Gary and Michelle had a bag full of beer and were getting ready to drink and hang out for the night. Few hours after she had entered the building with Gary, you see Michelle leaving the building from a side exit. It was around 12:48 a.m. when she left, and roughly 10 minutes later, she is back with another bag of beer. So the detective figures she went on a beer run for Gary. Nothing too strange about that. Officers keep watching now. It is around 2:26 a.m. and Gary is at the front of the building buzzing for Michelle to let him. Gary didn't have any beer, guessing the store was closed at this point. Detectives didn't have much to go off. All they knew is that Gary was last to be seen with Michelle. 11 hours passed since Gary went into Michelle's apartment, and it wouldn't be till around 2 in the afternoon the next day when he would be spotted leaving Michelle's apartment. He had a shoulder bag with him, a bag he didn't have when he entered the building at 2 in the morning. The detective thought it was weird to see Gary coming back to the apartment 2 hours later after he left. It was now around 4 p.m., and this time he didn't buzz to get into Michelle's apartment. He had the keys. Gary and Michelle weren't dating, so why does he have her keys? What made Gary a real suspect was when the autopsy came back and stated she was killed around the early morning of the 30th, which lined up with when Gary was seen on camera coming back to Michelle's apartments. Now detectives want to talk to Gary and hear his side of things, because from what they got, he is the reason for Michelle's disappearance. Gary was located and taken into custody on February 26, 2 months after she was murdered. When Gary came in for questioning, he gave the detective the runaround with lie after lie. He told them Michelle was seeing men after men, and he wasn't the only guy to enter her apartment. They asked Gary why he was using her keys, and he replied that she had given him the keys that night to make a quick beer run for her. These claims were refuted when the detectives then showed Gary the time-stamped keypad entries and time-stamped photographs from the surveillance video that showed he entered and exited the building on December 29th and 30th, and in the late afternoon of 30, he used a key to enter the apartment building. In response, Gary said that he and Michelle had sex in the early morning hours of December 30th, and she gave him her keys to do a drug run. He told the detective at some point that Michelle wanted cocaine, and he went out to go get some, and that's why he came back with no beer in his hand. He stated after she took the cocaine, she started getting sick and she had a heart attack. He freaked out and put her in the closet, but while doing that, someone started to knock on her door, which made him freak out even more, so he left after he heard the knocking stop. The detectives didn't buy that story because they knew she died from being choked, not a heart attack. What detectives think happened that night was Gary and Michelle started doing cocaine and were drinking heavily. After a while, he tried to engage in sex with her, and she kindly denied him since they were just friends. But that seemed to enrage Gary to the point where he started to choke her. He started hitting her in the face, and when she passed out, he raped her and tossed her in the closet with no remorse. Gary was arrested for the murder of Michelle, and at trial, he was found guilty of second-degree murder. He received the life sentence for the charge.